Today I'm talking to John Jenkins, a promoter of one of the Nashville shows. He has quite the history of promoting shows, but they don't always run smoothly. Let's hear him tell more.
Well, I think somewhere in the neighborhood, last time I counted, I was somewhere in the neighborhood of either personally being responsible for or being in very senior management of running about 350 shows. So there's a couple out of those 350 that really stand out. And the one story that's never been fully told to protect some people was the tent story in Nashville.
And Nashville's coming up. Why don't you tell us that story today?
Okay. So, for people without a long history, I'll try to keep this part of it brief. There have been a series of antique shows in Nashville, Tennessee, starting with Heart of Country, that began in the mid 80s, I believe 82 or 83, 84, somewhere in that range. And almost immediately, a series of satellite or tailgate type shows popped up. A couple years into the Heart of Country experience, my dad actually started what became the tailgate show at the Fiddler's Inn. And again, that's another separate story for a different time. But basically, over the course of the last 20 plus years, the shows have bounced around in locations. Heart of Country is no longer with us. There's a new show called Heart of Tennessee that is with us now. We moved our shows from the Opryland area to Hendersonville, back to the fairgrounds, Hendersonville, back to the fairgrounds. So there's been over 30 plus years, there have been multiple venues. But probably my favorite venue was the period of time that we rented a very large, and by very large, I mean 360 foot by 120 foot tent, and put it up in the parking lot directly behind the Fiddler's Inn. Now, the first time this happened, and I'll try to see if I can locate a picture, besides the 350 shows that I've been involved in running, I've probably been to another 500, either as a dealer's kid, a dealer, a show promoter, recruiting vendors, you name it. And all the shows I've ever been to, anywhere, Manchester, Texas, New York City, anything I can think of, I've never seen as much merchandise sell as sold at that first time we had the tent show. I mean, it was, I can't explain it. It's just, you literally look in a booth and everything would have sold tags on it. And it was a great venue. We'd been in a hotel previously. This is the first time that customers had ever been able to come in and shop it as a normal show, and they were ravenous. I mean, they were, you can talk to a few dealers who will look back at that and say, yeah, that was, as Jack Nicholson said, that was as good as it gets. And yeah, as a show promoter, you keep chasing that. Well, over a period of about, I want to say 8 years, we were in the tent 2 different sessions. One time I think we were in there for 4 shows, because we were doing 2 shows a year at that time. So for a couple years, we went back to the hotel, then we got kicked out again, and we were back in the tent. Now, the final time we were in the tent, the process of permitting a tent in Nashville, especially something this big, is fairly cumbersome. The application itself, once you got all the required paperwork in, was 60 to 80 pages with letters and insurance certs and flame retardancy certificates and specs on heaters and you name it. I mean, you have this big folder of stuff. But I also I got pretty good at the application process. I'd done it 7-8 times, and it becomes sort of rudimentary. It took a couple hours to go to all the offices and get everybody to sign off. But once they knew you knew what you were doing, it became a fairly easy process. So I stopped going down early to do that, okay? Because it'd become normal and pretty easy to do. Well, one of the things that happened, this was what ended up being the last tent show. I went down to the permitting office, which is some of the city offices, building codes and things like that, and walked in and slammed my application on the desk. You have to get a form to then tell you what departments you need to go to. So I slapped it on the desk, and the receptionist looked at it and flipped the page and flipped the page and flipped the page, and she said, "You can't do this." I'm like, what do you mean I can't do this? Yeah, the city council passed an ordinance a couple months ago. You can't do this. I'm like, what do you mean? Yeah, you can't put a tent up in what's called a planned unit development. It's a zoning type. And I'm like, boy, is there somebody else who might give me a different answer? And she said, well, you can go talk to this guy, but he's probably going to tell you the same thing. So it turns out on this Monday morning, we were informed, and again, we've done the show probably 7 or 8 times over the past 5 or 6 years, that no, you can't do this anymore. Apparently, there was a city councilman who had a son who had a Halloween costume and holiday shop inside the mall, inside a mall. And every October, somebody would come and rent a tent and put it up in the parking lot and sell pumpkins and Halloween costumes. And he goes, wait a minute, this isn't fair. So he gets enough votes on the city council that everybody agrees, this isn't fair. But like a lot of legislation, it has much farther reaching effects than anybody can see when it's passed. So there I am at 9 o'clock on Monday morning in Nashville while the tent is going up in the air, being told, no, you can't do this. So needless to say, I got on the cell phone and I called my dad and said, hey, Houston, we've got a problem. He goes, what do you mean? I said, they're telling us we can't put the tent up. As the tent is going up in the air, this massive tent with 15 people putting it up, with a company coming in with flooring, walls, electricity, heat, light. I mean, you name it. The entire tent project itself was about $150,000 just to put the tent up and get it ready. So we proceed to figure out every conceivable scenario that could even possibly, was there room inside Opryland? Could we morph it into an indoor show overnight? Could we put the tent up on the Opryland parking lot? Could it be put up someplace else? And we're quickly finding out the answers to all these are no. No. Now we've got 140 vendors coming. There's thousands of customers coming. And we make a phone call to the landlord and the person who owned or used to own the hotel, Fiddlers, because they were all actually very well connected politically in Nashville. So we immediately had this meeting, and they're all like, we'll make some calls, but we have no idea what's going on. So needless to say, there was not much sleep Monday night or Tuesday night because the tent's still going up. I mean, we can't. Henry, be quiet. You have to tell Henry to be quiet. He's whining. The tent is going up. The tent company is expecting to be paid. The wall company is expecting to be paid. Vendors are expecting to be able to sell. And we're kind of left there. And so finally we figure out, we get a meeting set up for Wednesday. Now, dealer setup starts Wednesday. They're setting up, okay? Nothing has officially been... We haven't officially been notified that we violated anything yet, but we're clearly in violation of, this ordinance, probably 10 other things too, because we're doing this without proper permitting, and the fire marshal's involved. And I don't know if you know much about fire marshals, but they have in a lot of ways a lot more power than police do, because they operate under this umbrella of public safety, which they can come in and close something down immediately. Like, this is closed. I'm calling the police. They're going to clear this. They're not going to ask me any questions because I'm the fire marshal. They're going to clear this tent out, and you're not going to be allowed back in it. All right. So these are some of the scenarios we're running through our mind. And we know the fire marshal. We've dealt with him before, and he can be a real pain. So we get this meeting set up on Wednesday afternoon, sort of like under the table. Now, the meeting wasn't under the table, but it's like, well, we can't really meet in the office because we're going to talk about some things that I don't want to talk about, and the people that are going to talk about them don't want to be in the office talking about these things. And this meeting probably never really happened, type scenario. So basically, we're there groveling, doing anything like, can we hire people to watch this? Can we, if it's a safety concern, can we put a fireman in the tent? And all these things are like, no, we're not the problem. The problem's the law they passed. So I believe it's on Thursday morning, and they kind of said, hey, we have to send somebody out. The city's, the guys that we're meeting, we have to send somebody out to take a look at this, because if we don't, we're not doing our job. And we're going, oh, great. What's he going to do? So this is where we caught the break. I think we'd done a pretty good job up to that point of doing Kevin Bacon at the end of Animal House, as we talked about. All is well. All is well. There's nothing to see here. Everything is fine. fine. Until the fire marshal and a couple other people showed up and started walking through the tent and, as they like to do, point and gesture and look and look concerned and take notes. And, so at that point, everybody starts to realize there may be some sort of issue. Well, the big break we caught was at the end of the inspection. And I forget who the inspector was, and if I remembered, I probably wouldn't say his name just in case he's still working. He said, "John, I'm going to slap this on the side of your tent, and it's a stop work order. Stop work, evacuate the premises. It's as bad as you can get. On a piece of paper, it's literally as bad as you can get." And I'm looking at it going, oh God. My career's over. I've been running shows for 5 or 6 years at this point. Time to find a new line of work. And he slaps it up on the side of the tent and he goes, "Now, I'm going to be back here Monday to make sure that the stop work order got followed." And I'm like, could you repeat that for me? Because I'm kind of slow. He goes, "You heard me. I'll be back here Monday to make sure the stop work order's been followed." Now, he walks away, and at this point, he'd put the stop work order up, and we'd stepped away, and a couple dealers had seen the stop work order. So there is, now this full-fledged panic, just straight up, "Oh, what's going to happen?" I think at that time I was maybe 27, 28 years old, and I've got, this tent, and Kay Puckstein was running the show with me, not to leave her out, but we got this tent full of people verging on borderline panic. And it took me a couple minutes to really get comfortable with the, "Hey, we'll be back on Monday" thing, but what I didn't realize that was sort of the solution that everybody thought, okay, this is how we're going to get by with this, and this is how we're going to turn our cheek this one time. So later that week, all of a sudden the fire marshal showed up at Fiddler's, or a fire inspector showed up at Fiddler's. And the guy's like, "What are you doing here?" The fire marshal's like, "What are you doing in this motel?" And we're like, "The same thing we've been doing for 20 years that you know about." "I know nothing about this. I've never been here before." Which of course was his cover story. "You can't do this anymore. This is, and he explained, and in truth, there were some fire marshal issues that were legitimate. It's an old facility. It wasn't sprinklered. I mean, there were some really, so we kind of got through that. And that Sunday morning, Dad and I would always go to breakfast and meet. And we looked at each other and said, "You know what? We can't do this again. This is broken." At that moment, both facilities were broken. The tent was out of the question. We'd just been told that Fiddler's, for our use, the way we were using it, was out of question. And that, and Dad and I weren't panicked, but we just knew we'd reached a point, and, we had always in the back of our mind knew that those weren't permanent situations, that at some point the hotel would age out, it would sell, it would become something else. We didn't quite anticipate the tent coming to an end like it did. But that was sort of okay, we've got to find a new home. Luckily we did. The Tennessee State Fairgrounds, we took a brief foray up to Hendersonville, but back at the fairgrounds, been happy there. It's a much better home for the show. I know Doug's still doing a good job, and he and my cousin Scott kind of figured out how they could use what they could use at Fiddler's, but it wouldn't have worked for us at the time because we had 3 times the dealers there that it just wasn't going to work for. But yeah, that was as close to not having a show as you ever want to come.
Yeah, one day away, it seems like.
It was
darn setup. I mean,
yeah, it was just, and of course the whole time you have to walk around as the show manager, like, "There's nothing wrong. Oh, I can get you a porter. Oh, you don't have your electricity? Sure, no problem." All the while pretending, that
all as well.
The iceberg is coming, the Titanic is not turning fast enough, and you're making sure that the impending doom on the horizon, but you can't show it.
So that's why the shows aren't all at the same location anymore, then, too. A little bit.
Yeah, that has a lot to do with it.
Yeah.
That has a lot to do with it. And, again, the they were quirky. It was an incredibly unique situation. At one point in time, there were probably 600 dealers between the three shows. And I'm never one to look back and say the good old days. I'm always trying to figure out what the good new days are.
Yeah.
But yeah, there were just some very unique things about it that won't be replicated. And as we age and get older, and even though I'm still on somewhat the younger end, I grew up there. My dad assigned me a building to run at Fiddler's. So we had 3 buildings, and he had somebody in charge of each one of the buildings. And I think I was in charge of a building at 19.
Yeah.
And then I went across the street with Kay Puckstein, and I think we started running Music Valley when I think I was 23. So yeah, I got a few looks early on, like, who are you, kid? Nepotism.
Yeah. Good old nepotism.
Good old nepotism. But yeah, that's there's a lot of other stories, that I think for this format we've gone on almost long enough. But yeah, I'd be happy to tell and also take some input from other dealers as well. But yeah, it's been an amazing experience. I think we're getting close to 35 years-ish, if you go back to the origin of Heart of Country. But yeah, it's been an amazing ride, and I look forward to it continuing.
Still more to come, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So for all those out there, they need to come check us out in Nashville starting...
Yeah, February 14th through the 16th are our show dates. Probably need to check various websites for opening times on both Fiddler's and Heart of Tennessee. But 3 really good shows. It'd be great to see everybody down there and tell stories. Matt, I know I'll see you down there, but anybody else who's got any great Nashville stories, feel free to chime in, and hey, maybe they can end up famous on a vlog.
Yeah, definitely. Come check me out and check John out at Nashville. Thanks for watching. I hope you liked it. If you did, please like and subscribe to see more. See you in Nashville.